All right, what's happening, my mathletes? That's right, Miss Muscarella coming at you. And in this video, we're going to do a little bit of a warm-up before today's lesson. So let's go. Now, here we go. We're going to review graphing a line, solving for y, and then graphing it. So let's check this out. So in our first example, all right, there's a 2y right there. So we're going to move 3x to the other side. So we're going to write down 2y equals, now so we got to be careful. Don't forget the negative sign with it, negative 3x, and then plus 12. Now, we're not quite solved for y, so we got to divide everything by 2. Now, the first term does not divide nicely, so that's just going to be negative 3 halves x. And then 12 divided by 2 gives us 6. So that is my equation when I solve it for y. Now, there's two things that are really nice about this equation. One, it tells us the slope, and it tells us the y-intercept. Now, the y-intercept is just the number 6, right? And the slope is going to be negative 3 halves. So generally speaking, if I have a negative slope, that means my line is going to be slanted like so. All right, so then let's go to the graph. So we'll put our first dot right on the y-axis at 6. So right here at 0, 6, that's my y-intercept. Now I'm going to move in a direction so that my line is going to be in a negative slope. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, over to the right 2. Boom, put a dot. Down 1, 2, 3, to the right 1, 2, put another dot. Down 1, 2, 3, to the right 2, put another dot. And once I get all the dots as far as we can go, then we just connect the dots. Boom, boom, and boom. So there is my graph. Now, it also asks, like, hey, what are the solutions? So the solutions, remember, these are fancy ways. So there are several names for this. Solutions could be x-intercepts. It could also be called a root or a zero or a solution. So all 3, 4 of those terms, all 4 of them mean the same thing. So if I look on the picture, where's this graph cross the x-axis? Well, right there, add that value. So the solution to this one, if we count correctly, 1, 2, 3, 4, so that solution is going to be x equals 4. So that is going to be the solution for this particular equation. That's where cross the x-axis. Now we look at another one, so let's check this out. This guy, got a little bit more work to do here, so let's zoom in on that so we can see all that. Now we've got this fraction 1/3 in front of the y, so we're going to end up clearing this fraction. So we're going to do that in a little bit. But first, we'll move the 2x over. So we'll get 1/3 y equals negative 2x and then minus 1. Now that 1/3, what we're going to do is put what I call a big beefy bracket around the 1/3 all the way to the right side of the equation where we have the negative 1. And whatever this number is on the denominator, we're going to multiply both sides by that. So 3 times 1/3, those 3's will cancel out, and we're just going to be left with y. On the other side, when we distribute the 3 to the negative 2, we are going to end up with negative 6x. And then lastly, we'll take the 3 and multiply by negative 1, and 3 times negative 1, of course, is negative 3. Wow, that was kind of easy. That's done. We're done with that one. Check that. Woo, man, we good. So when I look at this one, now, again, my slope is going to be just 6. And be careful when you write the slope. Don't write an x with it, because that's not how we write that. You just say m equals 6. You're done. And b, my y-intercept, b is going to be negative 3. Now, did you catch the mistake I made? Yeah, that's right. You better check yourself before you wreck yourself. That m should be negative 6. All right, so that means, again, I'm going to have a line that's kind of slanted this way. If it was a positive slope, if the slope was positive, then it would be slanted the other way. So the y-intercept's negative 3. So 1, 2, negative 3. So we're going to put a dot right down here. Here, let's make that a little different color. There we go. So negative 3. Now, with a slope of negative 6, if I go down and then right, that is going to be off the graph. So I won't worry about that one. I'm not going to go that direction. I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and over 1, 2, 3, and put a dot right there. And if I go over some more, then that is definitely going to be off the graph. So those are the only 2 points that will fit on this picture. So here, I'll draw as straight a line as I can, and I've got to go ahead and do that. Now, somewhere over here, and again, my solution is going to be wherever it crosses the x-axis. Well, where does that happen? Well, let's think about this for a minute. Every y-coordinate, so like right here, you know, I'm at 1, 0. If I go over a couple more spaces this way, I'm at 3, 0. So what do you notice that is the same in the y values? That's right, they're going to be 0. So when you go to solve this piece, the y value is going to be 0. So we got to figure out what value of x will make our equation 0. So there's a couple different ways you could do that. We could start with the original equation. You just say, okay, 2x, right, minus or plus 1/3 y equals negative 1. Now we're going to put 0 in for the y, right? So 2x plus 1/3 times 0 equals negative 1. Now that piece, that's going to be gone. So we're just going to have 2x then equals -1, because that piece right there, 1/3 times 0, that's gone. And some people will just kind of know that instinctively, so when you rewrite it, you'll get rid of that term. And then lastly, I get x equals -1/2. So my solution is going to be x equals -1/2. Now, based on the way I drew it, yeah, it doesn't quite look like it's there, but that's okay because it's a sketch, right? So my solution is x equals -1/2. That's where it would cross the x-axis. Now, one of the things I want you to notice there, because -1/2, that's about like right here, yeah? But check it out. My graph's off a little bit because it should go through there. Now, what did I do wrong? I didn't count right. That's a very common mistake. So take your time, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Because from that y-intercept, I should have gone down or gone up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but only over 1. I don't know why I went over 3. So I wanted to see if you were following along with me. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 1, and that's where that spot would be. All right. So now when I draw that correctly, it actually looks like the x-intercept or the root or the 0 or the solution does cross that graph around right there. So again, mistakes are common. Take your time and always check yourself before you wreck yourself. All right, let's roll. Now, this guy right here, same thing. Now, solve the equation below for x. All right, so we just got to get x by itself. Notice there are 3 terms, 2 on the left, 1 on the right. So I'm going to move that 5x to the other side, which is going to give me -21 equals 2x minus 5x is going to be -3x. When you divide both sides by -3, you will get a value of 7. So that's all we got. 7 is my value of x. That's not hard. Cool. Now if I look at this one, look at this guy over here. We got this issue again right here, where we have a fraction. And everybody always freaks out with the fraction. So again, I'm going to use that big beefy bracket technique because I want to clear this fraction. So I'm going to put all braces around the entire equation. Now the number that's on the bottom, you see I got highlighted right there. That number is 5. So what we're going to do is multiply everything through. Oops, I don't know why it keeps flipping. Gotta love technology. I'm going to multiply everything by 5. All right, now that first term on the left, when I get ready to multiply, -2 times 5, that's on the right, we'll get -10. Now, when I multiply 5 by whatever that term is right there, the 3 over 5x, that bottom number is gone. So we're just going to have 3x. And I have my little plus sign. Now, here's where you got to be really careful. You're going to ignore all of this part right here, the x minus 10. You're just going to leave that alone, right? It's going to be like Tetris. That's just going to drop down. So x minus 10, that's just going to stay the same. But then when you multiply that 5 all the way by this term right here, the only thing that you're going to have that -2 drop down. So be careful with that. That -2 is going to drop down. And this is going to clean up, make things a little bit easier. Now, as we go through this, take your time, just distribute correctly. So you get -2x and then plus 20 plus the 3x equals -10. Now, we just got a lot of little stuff to clean up here. So just take your time. So x plus 20 equals -10. And then when you move the -20 to the other side, you get x equals -30. Now, this isn't the only way to do the problem. There's several other ways you could do it, but I found that clearing the fraction is most simple for most people. So you get x has a value of -30. All right, so there's the first 4 problems. Now the solutions, let me go back to that for a second. Sometimes you may see the solutions written as a coordinate. So sometimes you'll put x equals 4. Other times you might see it written as 4, 0. All right, because that is where the x-intercept is at. Same thing, there's -1/2. You might see that written as -1/2, 0. So that would be a solution for this type of problem. Now, when you go to graph inequalities, so let's check a look at this one. This is pretty cool. Again, take your time with these. Again, adding 7 on both sides. Here we go. So we'll get 2x greater than -11 plus 7 gives us -4. So we'll get x is greater than -2 when you divide both sides by 2. So when we do these, we'll put a 0 here, say a 2 there, and a -2 there. Now that inequality symbol means I'm going to have an open dot. So go to -2, put an open dot there. Now if my x's are bigger than -2, if they're greater than -2, that means what? We're going to go that way. That's it. That's all you have to do. So all my x's, any number that I pick that is greater than -2. Now I can't pick -2. It has to be more than -2. Would be a solution for this. So I've solved it and I've graphed it. So same thing with this one. We're going to take our time. We got a little tricky one here. So we got -1/2 x greater than or equal to. If you minus the 5 on both sides, you will get 3. Now here, is where you got to be really, really careful, right? Because we're going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of negative 1/2. So what that's going to do is kind of think about it like this. So negative 1/2, if I multiply that by the reciprocal of itself, that is, I'm just going to flip the fraction. So it's going to be negative 2 over 1. So negative stays the same. When you multiply those two things together, notice you'll get a value of 1. Because positive times negative ends up being a positive, because you would get negative 2 over negative 2, which would just give you 1. So that is what's going to happen on the left side. Now, on the right side, we're going to have 3 times that negative 2 over 1. Now, when you do this, 3 is like 3 over 1, right? So 3 times negative 2, I'd get negative 6 over 1 times 1 is 1. So you have to be really, really careful here. So on that other side, we're going to get a 6. That is negative. Now, here's where you got to be really careful. Anytime you multiply or divide by a negative number, when you have inequalities, you've got to remember, so be careful to flip the inequality symbol. So that's a very common mistake people will make on that one. Because what you're doing is you're multiplying both sides. So I'm going to kind of maybe put a little brace out there like that. You're going to multiply both sides by negative 2 over 1. All right, so that's how you go through and do that one. So you'd multiply that, you get x less than or equal to negative 6. And then again, when we graph it, we get 0 there, 6 there, and negative 6 here. So x is less than or equal to negative 6. So negative 6 would have a solid dot above it, and less than, okay, we're going that way with it. Boom. Chocolate. That's it for that. Now, we graph these guys, so let's wrap up here our two inequalities, our absolute values right here. So when you look at the absolute value, a couple things. So we're going to talk about A, H, and K. Now the A value, remember, this is going to be the number that's right in front of the absolute value bar. H is tricky because you have to remember to flip the sign, and the K value is going to be whatever's outside the absolute values. So the A value is negative 1. So that tells me two things, and we'll get to those in a moment. The H value, the opposite of negative 3, is positive 3, and the K value is plus 1. So these things tell us a whole bunch of information, right? So the one thing that I want you to pay attention to is, let me write this H up here, and get rid of that there. So the H value, remember, that tells us that HK is going to be my vertex. So these two guys together give me my vertex. So that's the first dot you want to plot. 3, 1, go over there, put it out. So over 3, 1, 2, 3, up to 1. Boom, there you go. Now, the A being negative 1, that's going to tell me two things. So the first thing, let me write this over here. A equals negative 1 tells me that my equation, my graph, is going to open down. So it's going to look like that. The other thing it tells me are my two slopes. So both of my slopes are going to be positive 1 and negative 1. So whatever that A value is, that's going to tell you the direction, and it's going to tell you the two slopes. So starting from here, if I go down 1, I'm going to have this down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. So my slopes will go this way, and that'll fill in one side. Because it's symmetrical around that vertex, I'll have the same thing on the other side. So I will have this for my dots. Now this is an equation, so I'm just going to go ahead and connect those dots like that. So that would be the graph of that piece. Now, similarly, this one, we're going to do the same thing on here. Now, 1/2, so my A value here, so let's kind of move this guy over here. So the A value is 1/2, which means my absolute value function is going to open up, and my two slopes are going to be, what are they? 1/2 and negative 1/2. So those are going to be my two values for the slope. Now the x plus 1, so the h value, remember we've got to flip the sign of that. So that's plus 1, so we've got to flip that sign. So my h value is negative 1. And then the k value is just the same thing. So that is going to be negative 2. So I don't switch that, which means my vertex, right? My vertex is going to be right there. I'm going to combine those two to make my vertex of negative 1, negative 2. Boom, boom. So again, that's the first dot we plot. So we go down here and we take a look at it, and we're like, all right, negative 1, negative 2, boom, boom. That's right there. Then, as with the slopes of 1/2, so I know it opens up, so I'm going to start at the vertex, and I'm going to go to the right. So I'm going to go up 1 to the right 2, up 1 to the right 2, up 1 to the right 2, and the next one's off the graph. So I go back to the vertex and repeat that process, but going left. So I go up 1 to the left 2, up 1 to the left 2, and then we're off the graph. Now here's where we got to be careful, right? This symbol right here, because that symbol is less than or equal to, when I connect that, that's going to be a solid line for each of those. So I'll connect that using a solid line. If it was just regular less than, then you would use a dashed line. Okay, so be careful of that. Watch yourself. with those pieces. Now, the last thing, what are the solutions? So on the one that is the equation, I'm going to look right here at this value and right here at this value where they cross the x-axis. And that crosses the x-axis at 2, or I could write that as a 0.2 comma 0. And my other solution is over at 4, and that, or we could write that as 4 comma 0. So that those are the solutions there. Now with the inequality, it's a little bit different, right? Because we've got to do some shading on this because we weren't quite finished with that one. Now y is less than or equal to, so that means we're going to shade below the graph. And that's probably not a great color, so let's try a different color, shall we? So let's go with this. Yeah, we'll go with this color. So whatever color it is, but you're going to just shade all the way on this side below the function. So anything that is within, underneath that function, underneath the absolute value graph, that's going to get shaded. So now let's talk about the solutions for this one. So the solutions are any point on a line or I'm going to use lines instead of lines. So any point on the lines or below the lines are going to be the solutions. Now sometimes, I'll give you one other option here. So the solutions on the other one, sometimes you might see that written as 2, 4, and you'll put what's called a brace around it. So sometimes you'll see your solutions written that way as well. So that's a little bit about that warm-up right there. So hopefully you guys crush that, knock that out of the park. And as always, make it a great day. Simply go, no good reason not to. And I will catch up with you soon, my friends. As always, peace out.